Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the D1Baseball Podcast, a special edition of the D1Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Healy. We're going to take a look back at the 2025 postseason, and one of the best stories of the 2025 postseason. That's the Little Rock Trojans. We're going to talk to Little Rock head baseball coach Chris Curry here in just a second. Before we get into that, though, I have to remind you that this episode of the D1Baseball Podcast is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The sun's out and the fun is on at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Score a cool pool, savor summer flavor with a grill, prep for fishing weekends, or mount up with a new mountain bike. However you have fun, you can't lose with our top brands. Gear up online at academy.com or at your local store. Like I mentioned, Little Rock head baseball coach Chris Curry here with us. Coach, I appreciate you joining us this morning.
Joe, thanks for having me on, man. I'm a big fan of you guys over at D1 Baseball, and it's where I get all my news and up-to-date information, and you guys educate us on what's going on in college baseball. So I appreciate it, and keep up the good work, fellas.
Hey, we appreciate those kind words, Coach. And I'm going to throw kind words your way. Obviously, a heck of a run for you and your team in the postseason. I actually want to start here on that, though. As you watched LSU advance through the College World Series and then win a national title, did it dawn on you at some point, or were you aware the whole time that actually Little Rock is the last team to beat LSU in the 2025 season?
It did not dawn on us at all. We were just trying to survive. We did not have the Baton Rouge Regional on our radar at all. Didn't care where we went. We're just happy to be in the dance, of course. But there were, two or three regionals that were much closer. And some folks were telling us we were going to different places. And when Baton Rouge popped up, there was a genuine excitement from our team in the room, just because of the stage and the opportunity to go play. And we were excited. We knew that LSU had a chance, as they do every year, to win the national championship, but we did not know that we. When you talk about you're the only team to beat LSU in the postseason, that means Little Rock beat LSU. And we would even have to stop and wrap our brain around that, because we have so much respect for them. And if you would have told me that, I would have said, whoa, wait a minute. You're telling me we're going to win that ball game. And so the honest answer is no, Joe. We did not have that on our radar. We didn't know what was going on in the moment. We were just trying to survive and keep playing.
Another big picture question before we go kind of walk through the step-by-step process y'all went through in the postseason. But why was it this team that got this done? Because I know there was a lot of excitement about your 2024 team, and as happens in one-bid leagues, you just didn't get hot at the right time, right? But so why was it this team that felt like it might be a rebuilding year for you guys that was able to accomplish this?
Yeah, and I think to properly answer that, I got to give you a little context. This is starting my 11th year. And when I took over the program, it was down, falling on hard times. But that's usually why a new coach is brought in, right? There needs to be new leadership. There needs to be a culture change and a shift. We were in the very tough Sun Belt Conference. And, I remember as a 34-year-old new head coach looking around the room at Tony Robichaux and rest in peace, and Gary Gilmore and Mark Calvey and Rodney Hennon and others, that Tommy Raff, that I highly respect, going, boy, I'm in way over my head here. And Little Rock was kind of in that same vein. And then we found a way to compete. There were 2 or 3 years where we finished in the top 2 or 3, but then we moved to the Ohio Valley. And by that time, it had become a lot more competitive, and felt like year in and year out, we could compete for championships and go to regionals. We had only been to one before this year, back in 2011. Before we got here. But last year's team, preseason pitcher of the year, 4 guys, all conference, wire to wire, regular season first place, and won the regular season. And then we get to the tournament and 2 and out. And like you said, that happens to a lot of teams. And then we get to this regular season in 25, and we liked our team, and we were preseason picked second. Opening weekend, we swept Evansville, who was coming off of a super regional run to Tennessee, and the left-hander Deverman, who was very, very good. And so coming out of the opening weekend, we said, hey, here we go. We're just going to keep this thing going. And then when I tell you, just a rash of injuries and things happen, we had 6 starters out at one point in the lineup. And our depth is not enough to cover that up, and some arms were down, and then we just got in kind of a rough place. But why this team, to answer your question, I've asked some mentor coaches of mine. A lot of times it's not the team that you think is going to do it that has the magic. It's the year after, because a lot of those guys see it and are a part of it. But so many times as a coach, it's the team that you did not see coming that gets it done. And did I see this team going this far? No, I didn't. I thought they could do some things in our league, but never this far in a regional.
So you mentioned that some of the struggles you fought through, and part of that is you ultimately finish 8th. That's the final spot in the OVC tournament. But then you get in the OVC tournament and you go undefeated through the field. I mean, how much of that was a little bit of like a house money feeling, or did something click? Tell me just a little bit about why it seemed like you guys flipped a switch once you got in the tournament.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're reading our mail there. House money was one of the phrases thrown around our program there once we got to the tournament, and then on the heels of that, scared money doesn't make money, and so that's the way that we played for the last 10 games of the year. So we were fighting for our lives. Folks kind of said, hey, in the postseason, you guys are fighting for your lives. I said, no, we've been fighting for our lives with 3 weeks left in the regular season. We were literally scoreboard watching the final day. We were tied with another team, and if either we won or they lost, we got in the tournament. And it just so happened we did not win the final day, but they did not win either. And by percentage points, we got the 8th and final seed. And I made an announcement to the team in the middle of the game on the final day of the season. I said, guys, we are in. It's funny. I had to get one of my assistants, operations guy, said, confirm with the league, confirm with the SID. We can't get this wrong. But about the 5th inning, I called him up. Guys, we are in. You did it. And we had started preaching, Joe, about 3 weeks left. And this was kind of ironic a little bit. The hold the rope mantra that Coach Skip Burtman had for his teams, having no clue that we were going to Baton Rouge, having no clue that we would play against LSU, but meaning I know it's rough. I know it's hard right now. I know we're playing well below the standard and expectations of Little Rock baseball, but do not give up on this team. Do not quit playing hard. And they didn't. And so I make the announcement during the game, you guys are in, so I want you to relax and just go play. It doesn't matter about the regular season anymore. That was our team goal. Let's get to the tournament. Let's not break the program streak of going to conference tournaments. And so we didn't. We get to the conference tournament and we step on the field there, and it was just like 1,000,000 pounds off of our shoulders. And we knew we had a talented team. We knew the players were there. Because there have been flashes. One thing that will probably be lost a lot in this regular season is through our couple of bad losing streaks, we broke the program record for winning streak. And so at one point we got really hot. We won at Ole Miss, and we had won 8 in a row, and for our program that was a record. And I said, okay, here they're back. And this was with about a month left, and then we dipped again. But the difference was. They just played fearless. First game, our Friday guy throws a CG, and we score 10 runs. And the way our tournament is set up, if you're the 8 seed, you got to win the morning game and turn around and win the night game. And that's single elimination. You lose, you go home. And we won both games, and that made our way to the double elimination tournament. We started scoring runs. We pitched it really well, and there were different heroes, and we started getting clutch base hits. And then we were going further than we had ever anticipated, further than the team went last year, who was the team. And it just immediately started believing and climbing from there. There was a belief. We got some big base hits, some huge pitching performances by Jack Klein and others, and then we won 2-1 against a very good Eastern Illinois team, beat a very good SEMO team. And I think that gave us confidence that we were back.
Real quick, you mentioned that 2-1 win in the final against Eastern Illinois, and I have to imagine if if somebody had told you from the future, hey, coach, you're going to score 2 runs in the championship game, you'd say, uh-oh. But tell me a little bit about Jack Klein and that performance, a CG in the championship game. I mean, that's something that the Little Rock fans are going to remember forever, that performance there.
Sure. Well, we had a CG, Joe, by Jackson Wells in the first game, 10-1, and then game 2 we ran Jack out there, and that last week of the season is short,
right?
And so the pitching rest, especially if you have to turn around and play on Tuesday, it's tough. And Jack was a little out of gas the first outing, and wasn't his best, and he'll tell you that. But that allowed us to get him out of the game early on game number 2 of the tournament. And so game number 2, we won in a bullpen fashion. Well, we were able to bring Jack back again for the finals. And he throws a CG and pitches one of the gutsiest performances of his life. And he's coming. We just found out yesterday he is coming back this next year. And so he'll be the guy. And that's huge for us to retain him. But him going out of the game early, game 2, and not having his best stuff there allowed us to be able to bring him back. Because you see it so many times, the number 1 guy, the Friday guy, is brought back for that championship game. And I really did not want to do that to Jackson Wells after all the pitches he had thrown. We were saving him to maybe finish the game. We had him getting hot down in the pen when we won it. But starts getting the 7th inning, and we finally get the big base hit by freshman Cade Martin on a base hit down the right field line. That's another great story. He wasn't supposed to play, signed him out of camp in December of his senior year. And we had an injury and was forced into action and did a wonderful job. But just a gutsy performance, 130 pitches there by Jack, which I hate, but good luck ripping the ball out of his hand in the championship game right there after he's putting up zeros.
So you get into a regional, you mentioned it being Baton Rouge. A couple things there. I mean, you deal with LSU out of the gate. Obviously, that's just going to be a tough matchup when they're rested, ready, have all their guys lined up. But then you beat Rhode Island. You stack that up with a win over DBU. At what point in that regional did it feel like your team was dug in? That, hey, they believe, they know they can win here. Was there a pivotal point in that weekend where you felt like, hey, I think this team's got a chance to make a run here?
I knew they were not. So we respect everybody. We fear no one. We're a team. We're not going to talk trash. We're not supposed to. We may have a moment there, but then as coaches, we try to calm that down and let our play do our talking.
We're all human after all.
Right. We try to respect our opponent, but we are not intimidated or afraid. Part of that is because we make sure on our schedule that we go and play at really, really good, tough places to play, good venues. We go to Fayetteville every year. We go to Oxford. We've been to Starkville. We've seen, Oklahoma State. We've seen, but we've not seen Baton Rouge, Alex Box Stadium, Friday night, game number 1 regional, and that was different. But in that moment, we faced Ianson, and in that moment, our guys were not intimidated. We got beat 7-0. At one point, I told our pitching coach jokingly, I said, hey, just keep them under 20. If you keep them under 20, then we won't be the laughing stock of college baseball and, the quad box and Rooney and those guys won't be saying, wow, getting ugly down in Baton Rouge. We didn't want to be that team. So 7-0, and we had good at bats, and we stuck our nose in there and we competed, and the crowd, 11, 12, 13,000 were in game-like form, and our guys were not intimidated. And I said, okay. I think we're going to compete down here. As a coach of a mid-major team that hasn't been on that stage yet with your team, you don't want them to play scared. You don't want them to play fearful. You don't want them to play nervous. And we didn't do any of that. LSU was better than us that game, 7-0. They won. But we went to bed that night knowing, okay, we're fine. And so then we play Rhode Island, a top 25 team, one of the best offenses I have seen. Good grief. What a great job. And I didn't even, they had their batting averages, Rhode Island, up there as they were coming up, and I couldn't even look at them. Everybody was 330 with 10 or 15 homers. I didn't even look. And so we played them in the 1:00 game. And I think part of it was, this may seem funny, but we go from 13,000 the night before, or whatever it was, where we're standing room only and you couldn't hear a thing, to the 1:00 game. LSU wasn't playing, and so it felt more comfortable to us. You could actually hear the conversations in the stands, and that was kind of nothing to us. And we had just played LSU, and competed, and hey, we could do this. And so we got in there and scored 22 runs, and bullpenned it together there. And then, hey, good job. Now you guys got DBU, which is top 10, top 15, and Coach Hefner's, he's one of the guys I look up to, a strong man of faith. He wins. He hosts regionals. It's a matter of time before they go to Omaha, and just runs a first-class program. And that was the first time I'd ever have a chance to compete against him. And that was kind of a moment for me in my career personally. And then that's a ball game. And we hit 4 home runs that day. And so in one day, we beat 2 top 25 teams and oh, by the way, our first regional win. And so we were already playing with house money at that time. And we were already further than anybody externally expected us to go. We couldn't lose or have a bad season from then on. And so it was just a team that had nothing to lose. And a man who has nothing to lose is a dangerous man. And because he'll do anything. And then, of course, they say, hey, great job. You got LSU again tomorrow night. And our guys just smiled and said, hey, let's do that again. That was a blast. Let's load the stadium up. Let's have it where you can't hear yourself. You can't talk, because that was just fun for us. And then we end up winning that game, which was a blast. Malcolm Brown comes in the 5th inning and takes us home. Just sinker, slider, upper 80s, spinning it backwards in the count. And then you get to Monday night, the championship game, and it ended up being, I think, 1.1 million. Somebody said the number 2 most watched game. I don't know if that was ever or in the regional, but hey, who cares? A lot of people watched it, right? And I think the country was kind of pulling for the underdog there. And I made the statement, it's no secret that we are not the only college baseball team in our state. We've got another pretty good team in our state who we have great respect for. But I think that night, because the Trojans were playing, everybody in the state of Arkansas was pulling for us. So that was a lot of fun. And then Jay Johnson, he was first class. He said some really nice things after both games that I won't forget.
You mentioned earlier talking about squeeze play with Mike Rooney and Chris Burke and those guys. And I remember in the game in which you beat LSU, and I totally agree with this take from, I think it was Berkey who said it, that the most impressive thing about that win is that you just stared down LSU. They didn't make a late run. It didn't get tight late. You see so many of these games where the underdog is in the driver's seat, and then all of a sudden here comes the host team roaring back, and it's a white knuckle ride. But again, like, super impressive that your team just stared them down. I imagine as a coach, that has to be gratifying, because that's a team that wasn't, overwhelmed by the moment, didn't get sped up. And that, like I said, that just has to be gratifying as a coach to be able to do that to that team in their place.
I think the statement that comes up, and I learned this from my days coaching at Arkansas. I was in Arkansas on DVH's staff 09 and 10, and you would see teams that were, mid-major, and they would come in, and one thing you would watch for, if they had their phones out and they were taking video of the stadium and they were in a little bit of awe, you felt like the moment might get big for them when it came down to it. And so we have always talked about in our program and trained for this, that more college baseball games are lost than won. And what I mean by that is more games, if a team would have just made the routine, boring play and thrown the ball over the plate, they would have won the game. They're up by 5. But how many times you see it? A walk, an error, a hit by pitch, a ground ball double play that should have been turned and it wasn't. And so we coach to that. We coach to that in our program, and we found ourselves in that moment where we're +5, and all we need to do is throw the ball over the plate. All we need to do is make boring routine plays. Nobody has to dive and make a Superman catch, although we made a few of those. Just finish the game. And they did that. And that, Joe, was one of the most proud moments for me as a coach, was watching the team you're coaching on the biggest stage in college baseball, short of Omaha, completely just be relaxed and take us home. And the game ended on a ground ball to shortstop. Boring routine play. And I just could not have been more proud of the way that we were calm in the moment. We weren't sped up. And like you said, the mid-major team or the small team didn't throw the game away.
Yeah.
And because that would have been hard to swallow. Is, man, we had them. And the next night they just beat us. I mean, we were up 5-1 in like the fifth, and they had a bases loaded double, and then they hit a homer. They just beat us. But we didn't kick the ball all over the yard. We didn't walk a bunch of guys. And to me, that's the definition of competing. So many coaches yell from the dugout, "Let's go compete." Well, what does that mean? That means throw the ball over the plate, see if you can hit it. Don't be afraid to go out there and make a play. Don't be afraid to mess up. Get your best swing off, and let's see what happens. And if they beat you, shake their hand, we'll move on. And so I was proud that we handled that moment.
After the final and the season comes to an end, what kind of message was that in postgame? Because I imagine, let's say you had lost 13-2 and the game was kind of in hand from the fourth inning on. Maybe it's one thing and you've had time to process that. But the way you lost, where you're tied in the sixth, you're in the game the whole time. I have to imagine that was a tricky thing to balance in postgame of appreciating what you've done, because like you said, great season no matter how it ends at that point. But also, that was a group of guys that felt like, and they're right, we could have won this game.
Right.
And so that's got to be, tell me a little bit about that coaching challenge of sending the right message in that moment.
I remember right after the game, of course, it was the final game, so there was a celebration going on the field. You've got seniors in your dugout that realize that that's the last one, and that's the last time they're going to put their spikes on. You've got guys that all the emotions just come flooding out the last game of the year. We had media responsibilities and folks, pulling at us to go and talk because our story was one of the best ones in college baseball. But I did not want to lose the moment with our team. And so there's a back room there that we all kind of crammed into. And I just reminded them as it got emotional for everybody. I said thank you as a head coach. I said thank you more times in that post-game meeting speech that I've ever said. Thank you for changing the trajectory of Little Rock baseball. Thank you for, putting us kind of on the bigger college baseball map. Thank you for the roadmap and the legacy that you guys are going to leave, and you're going to be talked about around our program for years and years and years. And thank you for taking us on this ride. You're going to remember it when we have, our team reunion. You're going to remember it in 20 years. You'll be a Hall of Fame should be a Hall of Fame team in our university. And don't lose this moment, guys, of what you just did. And so, that old saying, don't be sad it's over. Be glad it happened. And we talked about that there right off the back of the dugout. And I just couldn't say thank you enough. Let a couple of seniors talk and said, man, walk out of here with a smile on your face and your head up and your chest out, because you did everything we talk about doing.
A couple more big picture things for you, Coach. I wanted to highlight Jackson Wells in particular. Incredible career at Little Rock, and now moving on to pitch at Arkansas. So I kind of like to ask you about, what he meant to the program in his career, but then also, what you're feeling now as you send him off basically to go try his hand at the SEC and see if he can get it done at that level. So tell me a little bit about Jackson.
Yeah, I'm forever grateful to Jackson Wells. We signed him after his freshman year at Rich Mountain Junior College, which was a brand new junior college. And we signed him this time of year. We signed him in July. He had no other offers. he could have walked on at that time at some Power Four programs and sat in my office and said, "Hey, I'm not a walk-on. I'm a scholarship guy. I believe in myself." I said, "Well, come here and be a Friday guy, be a weekend guy." And we had other guys, and to be honest, didn't know that he was going to be a weekend guy. And then he goes out in 2023 and leads all of NCAA in ERA. The guy that finished second is named Paul Skeens. And I know they were pitching in different leagues, but still, that's impressive. And he comes back the next year and tried to make some adjustments mechanically to maybe chase some velocity. And he'll tell you his fastball flattened out a little bit. And he's a movement, command, sinker, slider guy. And then last year kind of got back to that, especially the last month, and was one of the key guys that changed the trajectory of our program. And so it was kind of the worst kept secret around Little Rock baseball that Jackson was going to probably move on. But really the truth is, as we're here a couple of weeks from the draft, is Jackson really deep down doesn't want to pitch on a college mound again. He wants to be a pro, and he should, and they all should, right? But what Jackson is hoping is that someone will give him an opportunity. He just got married, so congratulations to him last Thursday. And so he is ready if the opportunity presents himself to be a professional. And instead of getting angry at him and saying, you're leaving us and those things, we've kind of embraced this new era of college baseball where if a guy thinks, and when Jackson sat in my office the day after the bus got back from Baton Rouge and we had our exit meetings, he didn't know where he was going. He didn't have a plan or a school in mind. He said, he actually said, I'm going to put my name out there. And if something doesn't come up that I like, I'd like to know that I could come back. And I said, well, absolutely you can, buddy. Absolutely. He said, I'm just going to and see what's out there. And so for about 3 weeks, he had not committed to anybody. And he had some suitors, went on some visits to places and they didn't click. And then the Arkansas thing kind of happened late. And so that seemed like a fit. He's from 15 minutes away from up there, but he didn't just jump right into that conversation. He really took his time and was meticulous like Jackson Wells is. That's how he goes about his work. And he really made a decision he felt. But we're not mad at him. And we've been a little out front of this as a mid-major. A lot of coaches are digging their heels in and saying, boy, there's no loyalty there, and there are some scenarios, Joe, that kids, I believe, are leaving for the wrong reason. If you're on your third or fourth program and you're at a new place every year, there's some questions there. But if a player has an opportunity to better himself, financially, maybe if a guy's just gotten married and can put himself in a situation to start him and his wife off in a good spot, maybe even put some significant money down on a house or something, I can't fault that guy. And so we've shifted at Little Rock. We've shifted our message a little bit to, hey, you know what? Come to the Rock, get better, get your innings, get your at-bats. And if there is a market out there for you, and whether it be on the pro side, I mean, we've had 11 guys drafted here in the last 10 years. So if there's a market for you on the pro side, let's get you to pro ball. If you feel like there's some career altering money or situation out there, then we're not going to hold you back. And I think that's going to help our guys better their situation. But immediately, and there'll be a lot of coaches when I say that say, well, you're selling your soul. You're not loyal to your own program. And what it's actually done is we haven't lost a lot of guys, Joe. We've had a lot of guys that have said, I want to come back. I want to win a championship. I want to leave a legacy and a story here at Little Rock. And I want to have an opportunity to know that I'm going to be developed by great coaches and I'm going to play and get innings. And I'm not so sure that the grass is greener. And so where you would think there would be mass exodus from your program when you say, hey, if you think that's for you, but we talk through that scenario with every single player and just lay out the pros and cons and talk with their family and say, is this truly right for you? Or if you have an opportunity to pitch in the postseason at Baton Rouge or take ABs at Baton Rouge like Angel Cano, and then why not pass that up? And so we talk about that. And so we're trying to look at this a different way. Time will only tell if we're right, but that's kind of the way we're looking at it.
Tell me a little bit about the response from the campus community, the Little Rock community. You mentioned it's been a long time since Little Rock baseball had been on that stage, and it didn't go as well the previous time. So it's a little bit new for this campus and that community. But tell me a little bit about the reception you and your team have received.
Oh, it was awesome when we started our run. Of course, our local media just was all over it. There were a couple of guys that came to Baton Rouge that followed every at pitch. We were getting messages from back home. There were watch parties that our athletic director, Frank Cuervo, and his staff put together, and there was a couple hundred people there just taking over the place. And when I knew that it had really gotten big is when the entire state of Arkansas and Monday night championship game was behind us, and folks that were fans for other college baseball teams in our state who will remain unnamed were actually saying, hey, you know what? 364 days a year, I'm for this team, but tonight I'm a Little Rock fan. And maybe had something to do with us playing their rival, but that's okay. We'll take our fans any way we can get them. But just the amount of support coming from back home, and then the national media started saying some things. You guys picked it up. That's what I knew. But the most cool thing, when we got back home, we got on the bus next morning, 8:00. Drove 6 hours back home, and we were immediately ushered into the basketball arena at our place. And there's cool video and pictures out there of, hundreds of people there giving us a hero's welcome. And then everywhere we have gone, it seems like my staff and my coaches, it's like, hey, Little Rock, I watched that game. I was watching that game. I was in the airport recruiting, and I had a shirt on, and oh man, I watched that game. That was awesome. You guys, it's been truly, it's been different. A lot of people, everybody loves the underdog. Everybody loves the Rocky story. Everybody loves the David and Goliath story, because I think it resonates, because everybody deep down wonders, okay, if I was in position up against Goliath, would I have what it takes and the courage to stare him down and go compete? And so they like to watch other people do that. And I think that's why everybody jumped on. But it's Frank Cuervo, our athletic director, we've opted in. We have an NIL budget at Little Rock. He wants to win. And there's some cool things that I can't let out of the bag just yet that are coming down the pipe for Little Rock athletics. And so we're here to stay, and we want to go back. And the Baton Rouge Regional confirmed that Little Rock can be a player in the college baseball scene as a mid-major.
My last thing for you, Coach, you walked me right up to the doorstep of my last question, and that's, how do you kind of bottle this momentum up and keep it going? What are you and your staff and your administration thinking about as you start to get ready for the 26th season?
Well, recruiting has changed. We're getting phone calls back from a high caliber player who want to pitch on these kind of stages and get to professional baseball. And it's maybe guys who are at places that they are talented enough. They have big arms, they have power or whatever. They just hadn't gotten their at bats. And so now Little Rock has become an option for those caliber of players to come and play and get those at bats and get those innings. And so recruiting has gone well. We've been able to pick and choose a little bit, where maybe in the past we kind of had to ask, and now we've been able to pick and choose, and that's been great. And as we've gone out and watched games, the feedback from the players, and I don't want to say kids, but the players, they watched the games too, and that was the most valuable thing, is all the guys watched it. And so we're able to build roster depth. We're able to tell the story of guys that have come here and done well and had their opportunity, and then guys that have stayed and said, I want more of it. And so we have a core nucleus back. I mean, you've got Angel Cano coming back, who was the Baton Rouge regional MVP as the runner-up. How many times does that happen? The runner-up gets an MVP, and then you got Jack Kleins coming back, and Geck and Chaplin and Ty Rhodes and Cade Martin, and all these guys are back, and we're building around that. And so that's been attractive to our recruits is, hey, I want to come play with those guys, and I want to develop. We do a great job academically, 22 semesters in a row. We've had a team GPA over 3.0. Our guys go get jobs in pro ball, or they get jobs in the workforce. And it's a great university in a great spot, centrally located to a lot of great baseball states. And we're going to play some people, and you're going to get seen at Little Rock.
Well, Coach, one more congratulations on a great season. Heck of a lot of fun to watch. Always love to shine a light on stories like this. So thank you for taking some time this morning and telling us a little more about it, and good luck going forward.
Joe, man, I appreciate it. Appreciate all you guys do over at D1 Baseball, and we're excited. And I hope this time next year we're talking about another great year.
Absolutely. Folks, that's going to do it for this edition of the D1 Baseball Podcast. I was your host, Joe Healy. Thank you once again to Little Rock head baseball coach Chris Curry. Thank you to our sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors. Thank you to listeners for listening, and we'll talk